And he looked at me most strangely. He said, well, I'm glad, Governor, that something woke you up, because if there hadn't, you would have woken up certainly dead in the morning. And I'm telling this story in America. This is getting to the crescendo here. I'm telling this story in America to the Americans. And they like a good story there, by the way. You know, look at their last president, you know. Got to have my little dig around the bush, you understand. Beat around the bush. And here, someone was taking, with their camera and a filter, a picture of me on the rostrum, as some people have done this evening. Thank you very much. The gentleman over there with his camera, I think. Thank you. And you never know what may come out on it, because here was the most enormous orb. And if you look very carefully in there, I'm going to show you ears, nose, little mouth, and even whiskers. And I've looked at that most carefully under magnification, and that is the frontal face of my deceased cat, Barbie. So she appeared in this enormous orb to say, Dad, I'm still around, you know. And one thing I've learned over the years, as I get older, it's comforting. You can't bury love in a box. It's eternal, ladies and gentlemen. I think I can be forgiven for saying that in this wonderful holy town of yours, and spiritual town, and this spiritual company, that love is eternal. And if one thing that you want to, don't worry about bank accounts and pensions and things like that. Store up your category of love, not just with people, but with every living thing that you can touch and it can relate to you. I've even had microscopic life, like my slime mold, Matilda, change direction because I wanted her to move over into a perfect gradient of the star. Well, I wanted to take a particular measurement of a pseudopodium. That means a false foot, by the way, for non-initiated. Indeed. Okay. This is a real podium, by the way. You know. Oh, yes, I'm here. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Oh, I have to get ahead of myself, ladies and gentlemen. Here we have the old site of the chopping block at the Tower of London. Okay, and I was told there are lots of things floating about there. Go there with your filter, Harry. You're going to see a lot of things. My other psychical research friend has told me. They've seen a lot with their eyes, so I went with my camera. So I went to the site of this scaffold, and I thought, well, there's not going much on. There's just a memento there at Tower, the Tower Green bit. Yeah, Tower Green, I think it is. And here, you know, where the scaffold was. And I said to myself inside, looking through the camera, I wonder what it looked like when it was built. Now, as soon as I put that out to the universe, an answer came back in energy. Because there's the site, and of course, usually I've turned my camera to a different angle to get another aspect ratio. A post appears, not of a person, a phantasm of a post. Okay? And I thought, oh, it can't be. I've got to get this photographed at a higher angle. So I raced across the courtyard and suddenly realized I was being chased by a group of Japanese tourists, probably wanting to know where this eccentric Englishman was going with his camera. So I was running up the tower steps and popping my camera against the window, which they're all behind me, trying to take pictures without my filter, by the way. Nothing would show up. You know. Anyway, I had my filter there, and here is the energy field of the scaffold where royalty and nobility had scaffolds built for them, knew every time their heads were going to be removed in the usual British way. Most politely, because it was done by English executioners, of course. Keep the French in their swords, that's what I say. Anyway. Historians amongst you, take note. Shall I go on? Yes, indeed. Anyway, here, stop, she says, right. Here we've got the scaffold and the energy that was descending from higher realms into the ground there around the enclosure. And I think I've looked at historical artist impressions of these scaffolds. I did my research, and it's very similar in dimensions to what would have held the priest, a couple of executioners' assistants, and maybe some. And, of course, the oglers would have been around the outside. Yes, don't want to Henry VIII on any more about that. Yes, indeed. Method of divorce was very sharp with Henry, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay, right. Now, as well as people that have been unwell and under pressure, I have looked at sick buildings, okay? And here we had a lady who I was treating for her nerves with the electrocrystal system. And it would be a question of 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. And I would only get her recovered to a certain level. And I said, what is the root of your nervousness and, you know, cat on a hot tin roof syndrome, as I call it? Somerset Morn, you know, wonderful, right? Yes. Where was I? Oh, right, okay. So I was invited. She said, my house is haunted. So I said, right, I'll come with my camera and we'll see what's haunting you, shall we? Please do, please do. So I turned up, and she says, when I sit down in the evenings in this settee, this is her office there, and it's all scrunched up. No one could stand here, by the way, I'm telling you that now. She said, out of nowhere, I feel a cool breeze coming from my right, and an invisible hand, I feel, will grab me. Oh, I said, that's not very nice. So let's see if I can... She said, yeah, I will see. So I had my camera there with my lens, and as you can see, the invisible hand turned up, grabbed her, she screamed and ran out the room. Right, I thought, you so-and-so. You know, disturbing a lovely English lady like this in her Tudor home, I'll sort you out. This is what I said to myself. And I made this announcement, you may be very good at bullying ladies and frightening children, because she had children, by the way, that had been frightened in the past with this thing. But try and scare me. Mistake. Don't do this. Because this is what happened. We saw this monk-like figure against the white wall appear. And I challenged it, and I went closer, snapping away, and I got too close, and I felt this invisible punch go into my stomach. Into my stomach, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I did what any brave Englishman would do. I've said this in Australia, and they respected me for it. I screamed, dropped the camera, and ran to find the lady of the house. Who immediately, in the good old English tradition, made me a fine cup of English tea. Being suitably brave again, we went in to face the entity once more. And this time she said, well, you probably antagonized it. Try and be more polite, Harry. And I said, right, excuse me, I said, whoever's here, we want to find out more about what's worrying you and what you're doing to disturb this family. Can you please show yourself, please, please, in your true form? And I apologize for what happened earlier. You must apologize, being British, always. Even when you haven't done anything wrong. I find it helps, especially when you're in America. Okay, and as you can see, the discarnate entity fully manifested. Now, I have to tell you, it's very low light, okay, too much light disturbs. But here, we can make out the face of a young youth with long hair, we believe, a waistcoat, frilled sleeves, and hands moving. I'm sorry about the lights being here, they're losing contrast a little bit on the screen, but lights coming up like this as if to say, go no further, come no further, close to me with that infernal device. And I later found out from mediums they were meaning the camera. I was seen as a one-eyed monster with my Nikon F reflex camera. Beautiful camera. Best one of the best cameras ever made. Of course, there's the Hasselblad 500 CM. Which, yeah, I'll carry on. Anyway, you need a good camera. Now, with digitals, you can get even further and more sensitivity with the lower ASA levels. I was using something like 800 ASA film in these days. But there's the film, hands coming up to say, come no further. And we backed off. And then I said, well, later on another day, I said, where else do you get these manifestations? You see things and feel things. She said, upstairs in the drawing room, there's a long settee. Against that are mirrors, which reflect into the room. And sometimes the children are scared by things, and myself too, with what they see in the mirror.